Sharks, the ancient rulers of the deep, often drift unseen beneath the waves, until a flash of teeth or a sudden jolt brings them terrifyingly close. Despite all our technology and precautions, encounters with these apex predators remain startlingly unpredictable. From seasoned divers to elite Navy operatives, no one is immune to the raw power of a shark's instincts. In this video, we'll dive into 6 gripping stories, from a record-breaking giant off California to a deadly cage breach in Gansby, where awe instantly turned to terror. The waters surrounding Catalina Island, 22 miles southwest of Los Angeles, California, have been a hub for marine research since the Pacific Coastal Marine Institute was established in 1972. In September 2019, the area's reputation as a great white shark aggregation site drew the attention of Dr. Marlena Vasquez-Chen, a marine biologist from the Pacific Institute for Ocean Exploration, and her research team. The island's unique underwater topography, steep drop-offs, and kelp forests created an ideal hunting ground for these apex predators. Historical records indicated that great whites in California waters typically measured between 12 and 18 feet, making the waters around Catalina a relatively predictable study site for behavioral research. Dr. Vasquez-Chen had been leading a comprehensive tagging program designed to track the migration patterns of great white sharks along the Pacific coast. Her team comprised 5 researchers, including marine technician Broderick Halsworth and graduate student Kimiko Tanaka Mills. They had been utilizing a converted fishing vessel named the Nautical Pioneer, equipped with specialized tracking equipment and underwater cameras. The primary objective of their 3-week expedition was to tag and monitor adult great whites to better understand their seasonal movements between California and Mexico. On the morning of September 15th, the team had successfully tagged 3 sharks ranging from 14 to 16 feet in length. The water conditions were optimal, with visibility extending to 30 feet and minimal current. Dr. Vasquez-Chen reported that the tagged sharks had exhibited typical behavior patterns, maintaining distance from the vessel while following their natural hunting instincts near the kelp beds. At approximately 2:30 p.m., while monitoring their tracking equipment, the team detected an unusually large signature on their sonar. The reading indicated a massive object moving at depths of 40 to 60 feet, far larger than any of their previously tagged specimens. Halsworth initially suspected equipment malfunction, as the size reading seemed implausible for California waters. However, multiple sonar sweeps confirmed the presence of something extraordinary beneath their vessel. Dr. Vasquez-Chen deployed their underwater camera array to investigate the anomalous reading. The team lowered their equipment while maintaining standard safety protocols for shark research. Within minutes, their monitors displayed images that would shock the marine biology community later. A colossal great white shark, measuring what appeared to be well over 20 feet in length, glided through the kelp forest with surprising grace for its enormous size. The shark's proportions defied everything the team understood about great white populations in California. Its massive head alone appeared larger than the entire torso of the previously tagged specimens. Tanaka Mills later reported that the creature's dorsal fin stood nearly 4 feet above its back, creating an almost prehistoric profile. The team began recording, recognizing they were witnessing something unprecedented in California's marine ecosystem. As Dr. Vasquez-Chen attempted to maneuver the vessel for better camera angles, the Nautical Pioneer's diesel engine suddenly backfired, creating a loud mechanical grinding sound that echoed through the water. The noise and the boat's vibrations appeared to agitate the massive shark. Calm and methodical swimming transformed into aggressive territorial behavior within seconds. The giant great white suddenly changed course, abandoning its leisurely patrol through the kelp beds. Instead, it began ascending rapidly toward the surface, its massive tail propelling its bulk with terrifying efficiency. Halsworth shouted warnings to the crew as the shark's dorsal fin broke the surface approximately 50 yards from their starboard side. The creature's actual size became horrifyingly apparent as it breached partially, revealing a body that Dr. Vasquez-Chen later estimated at 23 feet in length. Without warning, the shark charged directly toward the Nautical Pioneer. Its massive head, easily 4 feet wide, slammed into the vessel's hull with tremendous force. The impact sent shock waves through the 40-foot research boat, causing violent rocking that knocked several crew members off. Equipment crashed across the deck as the ship tilted at dangerous angles. Tanaka Mills, leaning over the port rail to adjust camera equipment, found herself sliding toward the churning water as the boat lurched. Halsworth managed to grab her arm just as she was about to plunge overboard into the same waters where the massive predator was still circling. The graduate student later described feeling the spray from the shark's tail as it swept past the hull, missing her by mere feet. The encounter lasted approximately 3 minutes, during which the shark made 2 more aggressive passes at the vessel. Each impact from the creature's massive body caused structural stress to the boat's hull, creating hairline cracks that required immediate attention. Dr. Vasquez Chen ordered an emergency return to port as water began seeping into the lower compartments. Once analyzed, the team's footage confirmed their field observations. The shark measured an unprecedented 23 feet in length, making it the largest great white ever recorded in California waters. The discovery sparked immediate debate within the scientific community about the implications for coastal safety and existing population models. Dr. Vasquez Chen later reported that the encounter fundamentally changed her understanding of great white behavior and size limitations. The aggressive response to mechanical noise suggested that these giant specimens might pose greater risks to vessels and swimmers than previously thought. The incident prompted immediate reviews of safety protocols for shark research and raised urgent questions about how many more of these massive predators might lurk in California's coastal waters. The discovery of this colossal great white shattered existing records and highlighted the unpredictable nature of encounters with apex predators, even during controlled scientific studies. A national park throughout Dade, Monroe, and Collier counties in Florida had served as a training ground for elite military units since the 1960s, when the U.S. Navy recognized the strategic value of its complex waterways for amphibious operations. In March 2017, the shallow estuaries and mangrove channels provided an ideal environment for covert reconnaissance training, mimicking conditions that naval personnel might encounter in hostile territories worldwide. The area's brackish waters, where fresh water from the Everglades and salt water from Florida Bay meet, created a unique ecosystem supporting diverse marine life, including one of nature's most aggressive predators. Petty Officer First Class James Whitmore Baptiste had been selected for the Navy's elite explosive ordnance disposal unit after demonstrating exceptional underwater capabilities during his basic training in Coronado, California. The 28-year-old from New Orleans possessed extensive experience in challenging aquatic environments, having grown up navigating the bayous of Louisiana. His current assignment involved a classified training exercise designed to simulate underwater reconnaissance missions in enemy-controlled coastal areas. The training scenario required Whitmore Baptiste and his team to conduct surveillance of a simulated enemy installation located deep within the mangrove maze. The exercise had been planned for months, with Navy intelligence officers selecting specific locations to challenge the divers' navigation skills while providing realistic environmental obstacles. The chosen site featured dense mangrove root systems extending several feet below the waterline, creating natural hiding spots for divers and marine predators. On the morning of March 14th, Whitmore Baptiste received his mission briefing from Lieutenant Commander Sandra Torres McKnight. The operation called for him to approach the target area undetected, document defensive positions using underwater cameras, and extract intelligence about potential weak points in the installation's perimeter. The mission parameters specified that he must remain submerged for extended periods, using rebreathing equipment to avoid creating surface bubbles that might reveal his position. The water temperature registered at 74 degrees Fahrenheit, with visibility limited to approximately 8 feet due to sediment stirred up by recent storms. Whitmore Baptiste entered the water at 0600 hours, wearing full tactical gear including a modified wetsuit, underwater communication system, and specialized camera equipment. His training had prepared him for low visibility conditions, but the murky water presented additional challenges that would prove significant. Bull sharks had been documented in these waters since marine biologists began systematic studies in the 1980s. Unlike other shark species that preferred deeper oceanic waters, bull sharks demonstrated remarkable adaptability to brackish and freshwater environments. Their territorial nature and aggressive hunting behavior made them particularly dangerous in confined spaces like mangrove channels, where escape routes were limited and encounters occurred at close range. As Whitmore Baptiste navigated the underwater maze of mangrove roots, he followed standard protocols for covert movement, maintaining neutral buoyancy while avoiding contact with vegetation that might create noise or visual disturbance. The mission required him to document 3 specific locations along a predetermined route, with each checkpoint presenting unique challenges for underwater photography. At approximately 0645 hours, while positioning himself beneath a particularly dense cluster of mangrove roots to photograph the simulated enemy installation, Whitmore Baptiste detected movement in his peripheral vision. The murky water made identification difficult, but his training had taught him to remain motionless when uncertain about potential threats. However, the creature moving through the water showed no similar caution. A bull shark, measuring approximately 8 feet in length and weighing an estimated 300 pounds, had been patrolling the mangrove channels as part of its normal hunting routine. The shark's presence in the area was not unusual, as these predators frequently used the shallow waters to hunt for fish, rays, and other prey that sought shelter among the roots. The animal's territorial instincts were heightened by the confined nature of the environment and the unusual presence of a large, unfamiliar object in its domain. The attack occurred with devastating suddenness. The bull shark emerged from the murky water and clamped its powerful jaws around Whitmore Baptiste's left calf, just below the knee. The force of the bite immediately penetrated his tactical wetsuit and drove the shark's serrated teeth deep into muscle and tissue. The predator's instinctive thrashing behavior began immediately as it attempted to disorient and weaken its perceived prey. Whitmore Baptiste's combat training proved crucial in the moments that followed. Despite intense pain and the shock of the sudden attack, he managed to draw his diving knife from its tactical sheath. The blade, designed for cutting rope and equipment rather than combat, became his only weapon against a predator that outweighed him significantly. He drove the knife repeatedly into the shark's eye region, targeting the most vulnerable area he could reach while being thrashed violently through the water. After several strikes to its sensory organs, the bull shark loosened its grip and released Whitmore Baptiste's leg before disappearing into the murky water. The encounter lasted less than 30 seconds, but the damage was severe. Blood began streaming from multiple puncture wounds, and the diver could feel torn muscle tissue hampering his mobility. Whitmore Baptiste activated his emergency surface protocol, abandoning the training mission to seek immediate medical attention. His team, monitoring from a nearby support vessel, responded within minutes of his distress signal. The extraction proved challenging due to his injuries and the confined nature of the mangrove channels, but his teammates successfully pulled him from the water and initiated first aid procedures. The medical evaluation revealed severe puncture wounds and muscle trauma that required surgical repair and months of physical therapy. The incident remained classified for security reasons, as the training exercise involved sensitive tactical procedures. However, the attack prompted immediate reviews of safety protocols for underwater operations in bull shark habitats. This led to enhanced protective equipment and modified mission parameters for future training exercises in similar environments. The waters surrounding Shikoku had sustained fishing communities for over 8 centuries, with generations of families passing down knowledge of seasonal patterns, underwater topography, and the behavioral habits of various fish species. In August 2003, the area experienced an unusual shift in bluefin tuna migration routes, drawing local fishermen farther from shore than their traditional fishing grounds. The underwater ridge system, located approximately 15 miles southeast of the island, had become a focal point for tuna schools seeking cooler waters during an exceptionally warm summer. Kaito Nakamura Yoshida, a 42-year-old fisherman from the coastal village of Moroto, had inherited his wooden fishing boat from his father and grandfather before him. The vessel, named Kishi no Umi, measured 24 feet in length and had been meticulously maintained according to traditional craftsmanship methods passed down through his family. Kaito possessed 30 years of fishing experience in these waters, having started as a young apprentice under his father's guidance when bluefin tuna were more abundant closer to shore. The summer of 2003 presented unique challenges for Shikoku's fishing fleet. Climate patterns had shifted dramatically, pushing traditional prey species into deeper waters and forcing experienced fishermen to venture beyond their familiar territories. Reports from other vessels indicated that bluefin schools were congregating near underwater ridges in unprecedented numbers. But accessing these areas required longer voyages and greater risks for smaller boats. Kaito's decision to pursue the distant tuna schools was motivated by economic necessity. The previous month's catches had been disappointing, and his family's livelihood depended on securing enough high-quality bluefin to sell at the morning fish markets in Kochi. His son, Hiroshi Nakamura Yoshida, a 19-year-old apprentice fisherman, accompanied him on these extended trips to learn advanced techniques for deep-water fishing. On the morning of August 23rd, father and son departed Moroto Harbor at 4:30 a.m., carrying enough supplies for a 2-day fishing expedition. The weather forecast predicted calm seas and favorable conditions for the 30-mile journey to the ridge system. Kaito had studied nautical charts and consulted with other fishermen about the most promising locations for bluefin activity, targeting specific depth contours where tuna were most likely to feed. The underwater ridge they approached had formed millions of years ago through volcanic activity, creating a complex system of peaks and valleys that rose from depths of over 1,000 feet to within 200 feet of the surface. This dramatic topography created upwelling currents that brought nutrient-rich water from the depths, supporting abundant marine life that attracted larger predators. The ridge system had never been thoroughly studied by marine biologists, leaving its ecosystem largely unknown to scientific research. Great white sharks had been occasionally sighted in Japanese waters throughout recorded history, but documented attacks remained extremely rare compared to other regions worldwide. The species typically followed migration routes that kept them in deeper oceanic waters, avoiding the coastal areas where most human activity occurred. However, climate changes and shifting prey distributions had begun altering traditional shark behavior patterns in ways that marine scientists were only beginning to understand. At sunrise, Kaito anchored the Kishi no Umi over a promising ridge section, where his depth finder indicated a steep drop-off that typically attracted schooling fish. The water appeared unusually clear for the area, with visibility extending deeper than normal due to recent current patterns. Initial fishing attempts using traditional techniques yielded modest results, but Kaito noticed that his lines were becoming tangled in what appeared to be underwater obstacles. Diving and investigating the tangled lines reflected Kaito's practical approach to fishing challenges. Throughout his career, he had frequently performed brief underwater maintenance on equipment, clearing fouled nets and retrieving snagged hooks. The water temperature felt comfortable for a quick dive, and the calm surface conditions suggested minimal risk for an experienced swimmer like himself. Hiroshi had fallen asleep in the boat's small cabin after the long pre-dawn journey and the physical demands of handling heavy fishing lines. His father's diving activities were routine enough that they rarely required assistance, and the young man needed rest before the afternoon's intensive fishing efforts. The peaceful morning setting did not indicate the tragedy about to unfold as Kaito worked to free the tangled lines approximately 12 feet below the surface. A great white shark measuring over 13 feet in length approached from the deeper waters along the ridge. The massive predator had been following a school of yellowfin tuna feeding in the nutrient-rich upwelling currents. The shark's presence in these waters was unusual, likely driven by the same climate factors that altered tuna migration patterns. When Kaito surfaced to catch his breath before making another dive to complete the line repairs, his silhouette against the bright morning sky created a visual profile that the great white mistook for a seal or other marine mammal. The shark's attack response was immediate and devastating, surging upward from the depths with tremendous speed and power. The great white's jaws clamped around Kaido's torso, lifting him partially out of the water before dragging him beneath the surface. The force of the attack was so sudden and overwhelming that Kaido had no opportunity to call for help or alert his sleeping son. The predator's natural feeding behavior involved powerful thrashing motions designed to incapacitate prey quickly, making any escape impossible. Hiroshi was awakened by violent splashing, and his father's brief, anguished cries echoing across the water. When the young man reached the boat's rail, he could see only red foam spreading across the surface and debris from his father's diving equipment floating nearby. The shark had already disappeared into the depths with its victim, leaving no trace except the horrifying evidence of what had occurred. The Coast Guard rescue operation that followed Hiroshi's distress call involved multiple vessels and aircraft, but Kaido's body was never recovered from the deep waters surrounding the ridge. The incident shocked Japan's fishing communities and prompted discussions about safety protocols for solo diving operations, though such attacks remained statistically negligible compared to other maritime hazards. Reunion Island, a French overseas territory located in the Indian Ocean east of Madagascar, has experienced a dramatic increase in shark encounters since the early 2000s. It has transformed from a relatively safe destination for marine activities into one of the world's most dangerous shark attack hotspots. By 2011, the island's coral reefs and volcanic underwater landscapes had become hunting grounds for an unusually large population of bull sharks and tiger sharks, creating hazardous conditions for the local fishing communities that depended on these waters for their livelihoods. The coastal village of Saint-Gilles, located on Reunion's western shore, had supported generations of artisanal fishermen who specialized in catching lobster, grouper, and other reef species using traditional trap methods. The rocky underwater terrain provided natural shelters where lobsters congregated, making trap fishing productive and economically viable for families who had practiced these techniques for decades. However, the rocky reefs that attracted lobsters also served as patrol routes for large predatory sharks seeking easy prey. Jean-Luc Moreau Delacroix, a 35-year-old fisherman whose family had worked these waters for 3 generations, operated a small fishing enterprise from Saint-Gilles Harbor. His knowledge of the local reef systems was encyclopedic, accumulated through years of diving to set and retrieve lobster traps in depths ranging from 20 to 60 feet. Jean-Luc's daily routine involved checking approximately 40 traps distributed across a 3-mile stretch of reef, requiring multiple dives in areas where tiger sharks were increasingly active. The morning of October 7, 2011, began with ideal conditions for diving operations. The Indian Ocean was unusually calm, with minimal wind and clear skies that provided excellent underwater visibility. Jean-Luc departed Saint-Gilles Harbor at 5:30 a.m. aboard his 18-foot aluminum boat, accompanied by 2 fellow fishermen, Marcel Beaumont-Rivière and Didier Leclerc-Fontaine, who assisted with trap retrieval and boat operations. The trio's first destination was a reef section known locally as Pointe des Galets, where Jean-Luc had positioned a dozen lobster traps 3 days earlier. The area featured a complex underwater landscape of coral formations, lava rock caves, and sandy channels, creating an ideal habitat for lobsters and the various fish species that tiger sharks preferred to hunt. The water depth at this location varied between 30 and 45 feet, requiring Jean-Luc to make multiple dives to service all his traps. Tiger sharks had been documented in Reunion waters with increasing frequency since 2008, when marine biologists began systematic tracking of shark populations around the island. These powerful predators, capable of reaching lengths exceeding 12 feet and weights over 1,000 pounds, demonstrated remarkable adaptability to reef environments and showed little fear of human presence. Their opportunistic feeding behavior made them particularly dangerous to divers working in confined spaces among coral formations. Jean-Luc's diving technique involved methodical inspection of each trap, clearing debris, replacing bait, and harvesting any lobsters caught. The work required him to spend several minutes at each trap location, often in crevices and overhangs where visibility and escape routes were limited. His diving equipment consisted of basic gear, including a mask, fins, and snorkel, with no protective equipment specifically designed for shark encounters. At approximately 6:45 a.m., Jean-Luc was working on his 8th trap near a coral overhang. A tiger shark measuring 11 feet in length approached from deeper water beyond the reef. The predator had likely been attracted to the area by the scent of bait from the lobster traps, which contained fish scraps and other organic materials that tiger sharks found appealing. The vibrations and movements created by Jean-Luc's diving activities further stimulated the shark's natural hunting instincts. Marcel and Didier, who were monitoring the surface from their boat, reported that the attack occurred without warning. The tiger shark approached from below and behind Jean-Luc's position, taking advantage of the visual obstruction created by the coral overhang. The predator's initial bite targeted Jean-Luc's upper right thigh, delivering crushing force that severed the femoral artery and caused immediate massive bleeding. The shark's feeding behavior involved the tiger shark's head-shaking motion to tear flesh from their prey. This violent thrashing dragged Jean-Luc away from the coral formation and into deeper water, where the predator's instincts compelled it to continue the attack. The force of the shark's bite and subsequent movements created wounds that were incompatible with survival, despite Jean-Luc's attempts to defend himself. Marcel immediately dove into the water to assist his colleague, demonstrating remarkable courage in the face of an active shark attack. His intervention, combined with shouting and surface disturbance from Didier, appeared to discourage the tiger shark from continuing its assault. The predator released Jean-Luc and retreated to deeper water, allowing Marcel to pull his severely injured friend toward their boat. The extent of Jean-Luc's injuries became apparent as Marcel and Didier struggled to lift him from the water. The shark's bite had caused catastrophic damage to major blood vessels and muscle tissue in his thigh, resulting in blood loss that could not be stemmed with the limited first aid supplies available on their fishing boat. Despite their immediate efforts to apply pressure bandages and improvise tourniquets, Jean-Luc lost consciousness within minutes of being pulled from the water. The emergency radio call Marcel transmitted to the Saint-Gilles harbor master triggered a coordinated rescue response involving the French Coast Guard, local emergency medical services, and a helicopter ambulance. However, the distance from shore and the severity of Jean-Luc's injuries made successful resuscitation impossible. He was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital, becoming Reunion Island's 7th shark attack fatality in 3 years. The incident sent shockwaves through Saint-Gilles' tight-knit fishing community, where Jean-Luc had been respected as an experienced waterman who understood the risks of his profession. His death prompted immediate calls for enhanced safety measures, including mandatory shark deterrent devices for commercial divers and increased surveillance of known shark aggregation areas. The local government's response included temporary fishing restrictions and the deployment of additional shark nets around popular diving sites. Jean-Luc's widow, Marie-Claire Moreau-Delacroix, later testified that her husband had been aware of the increasing shark activity around Reunion, but believed his experience and knowledge of local conditions would protect him from attack. The tragedy highlighted the unpredictable nature of shark encounters and the vulnerability of traditional fishing methods in waters where large predators had become increasingly common. The waters off Western Australia's Rottnest Island had become renowned among recreational divers for their exceptional visibility and diverse marine ecosystems. Still, none attracted more attention than the HMAS Perth, a World War II cruiser deliberately sunk in 2001 to create an artificial reef. Located 35 meters below the surface in King George Sound, the 163-meter warship had transformed into a thriving underwater habitat that supported hundreds of fish species, making it one of Australia's premier dive destinations. By 2016, the wreck had developed into a complex ecosystem where large pelagic predators frequently hunted among the abundant smaller fish sheltered within the ship's structures. Anna Blackwood Sterling, a 29-year-old marine archaeology graduate student from a university in Western Australia, had been conducting research on artificial reef development for her doctoral dissertation. Her project focused on documenting how marine life colonized shipwrecks and the ecological changes as these artificial structures matured into functioning reef systems. The HMAS Perth represented an ideal case study, as its controlled sinking and subsequent monitoring provided detailed data about the reef development process. Anna's diving experience included over 200 log dives in various Australian waters, with advanced deep diving, wreck penetration, and underwater photography certifications. Her research methodology required detailed documentation of marine life distribution throughout different sections of the warship, necessitating multiple dives to systematically catalog species and their preferred habitats within the wreck structure. The project had been ongoing for 8 months, with Anna completing approximately 40 dives on the Perth during that period. On the morning of September 14, 2016, Anna joined a charter dive operation departing from Fremantle Harbor, accompanied by dive master Craig Henderson Moore and 6 recreational divers. The weather conditions were optimal for wreck diving, with calm seas, minimal current, and underwater visibility exceeding 25 meters. Anna's research plan for this dive involved photographing marine life colonization patterns on the ship's superstructure, particularly focusing on areas where previous surveys had documented unusual species diversity. The HMAS Perth's position on the sandy bottom created a dramatic underwater landscape, with the ship's massive hull, gun turrets, and superstructure providing vertical relief that attracted both small reef fish and larger predatory species. Since the wreck's establishment, great white sharks have been occasionally sighted in the area, drawn by the abundant food sources around the artificial reef. However, encounters with divers remained rare, as the sharks typically maintained a distance from human activity. Anna's diving plan called for her to descend directly to the ship's bridge area, located at a depth of 28 meters, where she would spend approximately 30 minutes documenting fish populations before moving to other sections of the wreck. Her equipment included underwater cameras, measurement tools, and specimen collection containers for marine biology samples. The dive profile allowed for adequate decompression time and safety margins appropriate for the depth and planned duration. As Anna approached the ship's bridge structure, she noted the remarkable transformation that had occurred since her previous visit 6 weeks earlier. Soft corals and sponges had continued their rapid colonization of the metal surfaces. At the same time, schools of yellow-tailed kingfish, sweep, and other reef species moved through the superstructure in greater numbers than she had previously observed. The biodiversity exceeded her expectations, providing excellent opportunities for her research documentation. While photographing a particularly dense aggregation of fish near the ship's radar equipment, Anna became aware of a large shadow moving beyond the edge of her visibility range. Initially, she assumed the shadow belonged to one of the other divers from her group, as great white sharks rarely approached wreck sites during daylight hours when human activity was present. However, the size and movement pattern of the shadow quickly indicated that she was observing something far larger than a human diver. A great white shark measuring approximately 12 feet in length emerged from the blue water beyond the wreck and began a slow, investigative approach toward Anna's position. The predator's behavior appeared curious rather than aggressive, maintaining a steady swimming pattern while observing the unfamiliar intruder in its territory. Anna's training had prepared her for potential shark encounters, and she recognized the importance of remaining calm and avoiding sudden movements that might trigger defensive or predatory behavior. The shark's initial contact with Anna was surprisingly gentle. The massive predator brushed against her arm while passing close to her position near the bridge structure. The contact felt almost investigative, as if the shark used its highly sensitive skin to gather information about this unusual creature sharing its environment. Anna later reported that the experience was terrifying and fascinating, as she could observe the shark's powerful musculature and impressive size from extremely close range. However, the shark's behavior changed dramatically within seconds of the initial contact. Whether triggered by Anna's involuntary movement, her equipment's scent, or natural predatory instincts, the great white suddenly clamped its jaws around her left forearm. The bite was powerful enough to penetrate her wetsuit and compress the flesh beneath, but appeared to be exploratory rather than a full feeding attack. The pain was immediate and intense, as the shark's serrated teeth punctured through neoprene and into muscle tissue. Anna's training prevented her from panicking, but the shock of being bitten by such a powerful predator while trapped within the confines of a shipwreck created a terrifying situation. The shark maintained its grip for several seconds, during which Anna could feel the tremendous pressure of its jaw muscles and the sharp edges of its teeth against her arm. Anna's response demonstrated both courage and presence of mind under extreme circumstances. She drew her diving knife from its sheath and struck the shark several times on its snout and around its eye area, targeting the most sensitive region she could reach. The impacts appeared to surprise the predator, which released its grip and backed away from her position. Immediately after the shark released her, Anna activated her emergency signaling device and began a controlled ascent toward the surface. The bite wounds were bleeding significantly, creating a visible blood trail in the water that could attract other predators or encourage the same shark to return. Her emergency ascent procedures followed proper decompression protocols despite the urgent nature of her situation, as rapid ascent could have created additional life-threatening complications. Craig Henderson Moore, supervising other divers in a different wreck section, responded immediately to Anna's distress signal. His emergency first aid training proved crucial in controlling the bleeding from her bite wounds and organizing her evacuation from the water. The charter boat's captain initiated emergency medical protocols and requested a helicopter evacuation to the nearest trauma center. Anna's injuries required extensive surgical repair of damaged muscle tissue and severed blood vessels in her forearm. The recovery process involved months of physical therapy and psychological counseling to address the trauma of the shark encounter. However, her detailed account of the incident provided valuable insights into great white shark behavior around artificial reefs and contributed to improved safety protocols for research diving operations. The incident prompted the university to review safety procedures for student research activities in areas with large predators. Additional safety measures included mandatory shark deterrent devices, buddy diving requirements for all research activities, and enhanced emergency response protocols for remote diving locations. The coastal waters near Gansbaai, South Africa, had earned the designation as the Great White Shark Capital of the world by the early 2000s, attracting marine biologists, documentary filmmakers, and adventure tourists from across the globe, and located approximately 160 kilometers southeast of Cape Town. The area's unique marine ecosystem supported one of the planet's densest populations of great white sharks, drawn by the abundant Cape fur seals that inhabited nearby Dyer Island and Geyser Rock. In 2014, the region's shark cage diving industry had evolved into a sophisticated operation involving multiple tour companies and research organizations. Still, the inherent dangers of placing humans near apex predators remained a constant concern. Dr. Sophie Whitmore Langley, a 31-year-old marine biologist from a university in Cape Town's Department of Biological Sciences, had been conducting behavioral research on great white sharks for 6 years, focusing on their hunting patterns, social interactions, and responses to human activity. Her research methodology required extensive underwater observation using specially designed shark cages that allowed for close-range documentation, while theoretically providing complete protection from predator attacks. Her collected data contributed to international conservation efforts and improved understanding of great white shark ecology. Sophie's current research project involved documenting feeding behaviors and social hierarchies among great white sharks during natural hunting situations. The study required her to spend hundreds of hours underwater, observing sharks as they interacted with seal colonies and competing predators. Her work had already produced significant scientific publications and contributed to revised conservation policies for great white shark protection in South African waters. The shark cage diving operation based in Kleinbaai Harbor supported scientific research for over a decade, providing specialized equipment and experienced boat crews for academic studies. The company's primary vessel, the White Shark Explorer, was equipped with multiple shark cages of varying designs, sophisticated chum systems for attracting sharks, and comprehensive safety equipment, including emergency medical supplies and communication systems. On the morning of July 22, 2014, Sophie joined a research expedition that included cage operator Hendrik van der Merwe Botha, boat captain Peter Gronewald Smith, and 2 graduate students assisting with data collection. The weather conditions were ideal for cage diving operations, with calm seas, moderate wind, and excellent underwater visibility that extended beyond 15 meters. The research plan called for Sophie to spend 3 hours underwater, documenting shark behaviors during peak feeding activity periods. The sharks that frequented Gansbai waters included individuals measuring up to 6 meters long, with some specimens weighing over 2,000 kilograms. These massive predators demonstrated remarkable intelligence and curiosity, often approaching cage diving operations to investigate the unusual activities occurring in their territory. The interactions between sharks and caged humans have provided valuable insights into great white behavior and highlighted the unpredictable nature of these encounters. Sophie's diving cage was constructed from galvanized steel bars with 4-inch spacing, designed to prevent sharks from accessing the interior while allowing unobstructed viewing and photography. The cage measured approximately 2 meters in height, width, and depth, providing adequate space for a single diver while maintaining structural integrity against potential shark impacts. Safety protocols required the cage to be inspected before each dive, with particular attention to latch mechanisms and structural connections. The first 2 hours of Sophie's dive proceeded according to normal patterns, with several great white sharks approaching the cage to investigate the chum slick and the unusual human presence. She documented 3 distinct individuals, including a massive female that appeared to exceed 5 meters in length. The shark's behavior remained typical of previous observations, showing curiosity but maintaining respectful distance from the cage structure. At approximately 10:30 a.m., during Sophie's third planned descent, a colossal great white shark approached the cage diving area with unprecedented aggression. The massive predator, later estimated at over 5 meters in length, demonstrated territorial behavior that exceeded anything Sophie had previously observed. The shark's size and aggressive posture suggested it was a mature individual that had established dominance over the local area. The shark's initial approach appeared routine, but its behavior quickly escalated beyond normal investigative patterns. Instead of the typical cautious circling that characterized most shark encounters, this massive predator began making direct, forceful approaches toward the cage. The intensity of its movement suggested territorial aggression or confusion about the nature of the cage structure. During one particularly aggressive pass, the enormous shark struck the cage with sufficient force to damage the primary latch mechanism that secured the cage door. The impact occurred so suddenly that neither Sophie nor the surface crew recognized the potential danger until the shark's next approach revealed the compromised security of the cage structure. The damaged latch created a gap in the cage's protective barrier that could allow shark access to the interior. The massive great white's subsequent charge was even more violent than its previous approaches. The predator launched itself directly at the cage with tremendous speed, creating an impact that further damaged the compromised latch system. The collision caused the cage door to swing partially open, creating a breach in the protective barrier that Sophie had depended upon for her safety. In the seconds following the cage breach, the great white shark's natural curiosity and hunting instincts compelled it to investigate the opening that had been created. The predator's massive head and portion of its body entered the cage space, bringing Sophie into direct contact with one of the ocean's most dangerous predators. The cage's confined space made evasive maneuvers impossible, trapping humans and sharks extremely close. The shark's bite occurred as it attempted to investigate Sophie's presence within the compromised cage. The predator's jaws closed around her left leg, applying crushing pressure that immediately penetrated her wetsuit and compressed the flesh beneath. The bite was exploratory rather than predatory, but the power of the shark's jaw muscles created severe tissue damage and bleeding. Sophie's screams, audible to the surface crew through her diving communication system, triggered immediate emergency procedures. Hendrik van der Merwe Botha dove into the water to assist with cage extraction, while Peter Gronewald Smith prepared emergency medical equipment. The combined efforts of the crew succeeded in closing the damaged cage door and extracting Sophie from the water within minutes of the attack. The medical evaluation revealed severe lacerations and crush injuries to Sophie's left leg, requiring immediate surgical intervention to repair damaged blood vessels and muscle tissue. The helicopter evacuation to Cape Town's trauma center proved crucial in preventing life-threatening complications from blood loss and shock. Sophie's recovery required multiple surgeries and extensive physical rehabilitation over 18 months. The incident prompted immediate reviews of cage diving safety protocols throughout the South African shark tourism industry. Enhanced cage designs, improved latch mechanisms, and modified safety procedures were implemented to prevent similar breaches in the future. Sophie's detailed account of the encounter contributed to scientific understanding of great white shark behavior and improved safety standards for marine research operations worldwide.